Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and today I have a special guest with us. He is the creator of a new horror comic book that actually just hit a Kickstarter goal. Congratulations, man. Congratulations. And it's called The Dirt Witch. I have with us, once again, the creator, John McCarthy. John, welcome to the Horror Room.
Hey, man, thank you guys for having me on. I really appreciate it, dude. I love coming on the horror shows and talking creepy, cool stuff, you know?
It's a blast to have you on, man. Listen, The Dirt Witch looks bad fucking ass, man. Tell us a little bit about it.
Thank you. A lot of that look goes towards credit goes towards our artist, a guy named Thomas Tikas, he and I had worked together on a comic book that came out last year, a little zombie story that I did called Signal 29, and he's in Greece, but he's kind of an up-and-coming newer guy, and he does amazing work. So the look of the book was all credited to him and the rest of the team involved with it. But the story of this thing, so when we were, let me give you the long form answer to your simple question. So I really series of a comic series that came out I think 2 years ago called Endangered. It was a science fiction kind of thriller, a little bit of horror tones in it, and we got 4 issues out, and this whole market kind of got crazy, and the distribution stuff and the working with the publisher, it all got to be a real hectic kind of pain in the ass, which was really kind of kicking us in the teeth. So I made the decision to kind of put that book on the shelf for the moment after issue 4, and to kind of regroup on how we were going to release our comics. And I decided on doing this model where we were releasing these one-shot stories, you know, because our books are done through a publisher, and they'll be going into comic book shops. And my assumption was it would be a little bit easier ask of a comic shop to take a chance in ordering one of these one-and-done, one-shot stories, as opposed to having to ask their customers to commit to a series where they're waiting on an issue 2 or an issue 3 or an issue, you know, ongoing like that. So we decided to launch these one-shot stories, and I love horror, man. So I had plenty of stories on my hard drive that I really wanted to tell. And so this was kind of for me, it was a breath of fresh air. I'm like, awesome, dude, I can really kind of work on these stories that I wanted to do. And so we released these, and we had this master plan all along that everything would kind of tie together, but we didn't really reveal that initially. We said we were going to release these, and they're all individual one-offs. You don't need the prior one to go to the next one, and that's actually true. You don't, because seemingly they have nothing to do with each other. But the entire goal was we were going to release 3 of these. It was a little fresh take, I think, on a zombie story, which was Signal 29. We released our kick-ass werewolf book called Loup Garou. That came out in October. And then The Dirt Witch, which is coming out in July of this year, was the 3rd one. And then the plan all along was, once the 3 are finished, we were going to collect them together in a trade paperback, you know, which is where you usually in a comic book, everybody kind of all their stuff together. But usually what most folks do is they just kind of take all their stuff and just slap it together in this one thick volume that collects everything. But I kind of felt like there's nothing wrong with that, but I was like, I kind of want to do a little something different. So the plan all along was we were going to create a 4th overarching kind of narrative solely for that trade paperback collected edition that would be something that tied all 3 of these stories together in sort of like a creep show type anthology where it's individual little shorts all tied together with one like connecting thread. And so we're working on that right now, but The Dirt Witch, which is coming, is the final one of those. And so what it's about is those other 2, we did zombies and we did werewolves, both things that I'm big fans of in the genres. But I wanted to kind of do one of them where it was just kind of me making my own like sole unique contribution to the genre, and hopefully people will respond well to it. So I wanted to create my own monster, right, to put into the world. And it all kind of began, there's this photo you can find online. It was pretty viral for a little while, and it was of this light pole in I don't remember where it's somewhere in Europe, and it's got this moss kind of hanging over the light, and it looks creepy shit at night. Yeah, dude. It's like, you know what I'm talking about? You familiar with the image?
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes.
That image was like, bro, I want to do something with that, you know, and that kind of inspired that this creature that we came up with. That is kind of a combination of, I love the movie Pumpkinhead, you know, I think most people probably watching this. Yes. And so I was kind of like, man, I want to kind of take something and kind of play around with all these things, but the look of that monster because that was going to be the big centerpiece of it. Beside the story, was she needed to look cool, and it was kind of taking that light pole and then mixing that really with in my opinion, the scariest scene of The Shining, which is when the kid goes into the room and the woman's in the tub, the old prone looking naked chick. That shit freaked me out as a kid, man. That was, to me, the scariest of the whole movie. So kind of combining those two things is what this creature came from. And then we had to tell the story. So what the story is about, I know this is a long-ass answer to your question.
No, you're good.
The story is basically this kid who is bullied terribly. He's kind of having a rough day. His best friend works at this local record store here in New Orleans, who were cool enough to let us include them. Actually, the real record stores in the comic book called Peaches Records.
Oh, nice.
But his buddy works in the record store, so this kid gets his ass, handed to him by these bullies one day at school, and they tell him, tomorrow your ass is grass. So he's like all bummed out, and he winds up going to see his buddy in this record store, and his friend's like, hey man, I got something that's going to cheer you up. He's like, I went on the dark web and I found this Norwegian death metal album. And the rumor is that the band that recorded it were really into demons and shit, right? So supposedly they found a way to summon this creature and included that spell into this record. And it's the only one that exists because they were found all torn to pieces with this record still spinning on the recording table. And I got it off the dark web. So if I know anything about heavy metal records, if you play this shit backwards, something's probably going to happen. And of course, the main character, Randall's like, dude, listen, I'm dealing with these fucking bullies. I don't give a shit about this. So some things happen. He ends up having to take it to bail his buddy out who bought it with the store credit card by getting fired. So he's like, take this. It's not mine. It's yours. So he winds up taking it home, and he's kind of, contemplating his miserable existence. And, he plays this thing backwards. And nothing seemingly happens at first. And then that next day comes, and these bullies corner him outside of school, and he runs and basically takes refuge into this little kind of abandoned construction site. And right when shit's about to go crazy, this thing makes its appearance, and rough things happen. She's a child-eating demon who feeds on fear. And she basically tells him, you summoned me, so that means you belong to me now forever. So either you're going to bring me children to eat, or I'm going to eat you. And then the story opens, actually, it's not really a spoiler, but on the first page of the story, you see this kid now, he's an adult. We open the story with him as an adult. He's got a little girl now, and all of a sudden a SWAT team breaks into his house, busts his door down, and arrest him and say that we got you. You're a fucking serial killer of children who's been murdering these kids for the past 14 years. And you're like, the reader's hopefully like, what the fuck is going on? Then it goes back to his time as a child, and you see how all these things unfold. And there's a nice little cool twist at the end where you're like, ooh, the bad things just keep on happening. It's pretty dark in places, but I'm very fortunate that we sent it out to some folks to do some reviews on it. Quite a few of them, actually, and I'm very proud that 100% of the people who reviewed it loved it. And a common thread I saw amongst some of these folks who were reviewing it, they kept mentioning it reminded them a lot of like Evil Dead, like Sam Raimi type story. I wasn't really going for that, but that's a hell of a compliment to me because I love those movies. Other than that, didn't really like the last one that much. But all of the OG Evil Deads and even the remake, the first remake, I thought was fantastic. But so excellent. That not the Evil Dead 2 kind of campy, goofy shit. This one's a lot more dark, I think. And the hard part when you do these types of stories, and I talk a lot, obviously, so cut me off.
No, you're good. You're good.
The hard part and the challenge that I really kind of went after with the Dirt Witch as a kind of a writer of comic books is it's difficult to tell a scary story in that medium because you lack a lot of the things that horror movies in particular, or even novels, have at their disposal to create tension and fear. With movies, you have music and things like that. With novels and other forms of writing, you're able to kind of go inside the character's head. But comics are similar to films in the sense that they're visual stories just told through non-moving photos or pictures, panels. And so you only have a few things you can really rely on to kind of instill tension in a reader, which is, you have to create characters that people give a shit about, because if you can't make them care about your characters early, they don't care if a damn demon eats them or not, And then you have to rely on, and it seems easy, I think, to some folks who don't really know much about writing comics, but it's difficult because the real thing that you have, the most powerful tool you have, is what's called your page turn. So you have to pace these panels out so that, at the very last image on every odd page, you want something that's going to make the reader turn the page. They're like, oh shit, what happens next? Kind of like mini cliffhangers almost, or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy that this one turned out the way it did. It took a lot of work, but I feel like we actually created something that's kind of creepy, man, and it can maybe give some folks nightmares, which is always what you want whenever you're making a scary story like this.
I fucking love it, man. Now, I am so fucking excited right now, and I mean, especially on the show, I give horror creators of all forms, a spotlight, absolute spotlight. But I have been interviewing a lot of indie horror comic creators or graphic novel creators, and it seems like that. Yeah, it is a lot coming out, and you guys have put some good shit out there, and I'm glad it's happening, because it seems like the comic and graphic novel kind of took a dip a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of making that resurgence again. And I grew up on graphic novels. I grew up on comic books. I grew up on anthologies like Tales from Crypt and Creepshow. So I'm excited to see that horror comic and graphic novels are fucking making a huge comeback.
Yeah, it's a tough market right now, man. A couple of years ago when I did that Endangered series, the comic book market was much like everything else, during COVID and all of that. Everyone had this sudden surge of disposable income, so collectibles and just extra things like this, people were buying them left and right. They didn't really think about it. It was a lot economically, it was a little bit easier of a sell, but now with the overall economy's in a little bit of a downturn. You definitely see that on comic books as well. But no, I'm with you, man. I think one thing it's hard to do is it's hard to take someone who's never really been into comic books other than when they were a kid reading like Superman stories or Fantastic Four, and letting them know, like, dude, there's some serious comics made for adults, and there's some really, as you mentioned, there's some great horror stories that are being told through that. I mean, hell, those Tales from the Crypt, those started as comic books. I mean, when you watch that movie, you see they actually incorporate the comics into it. So there's a long history of horror in that comic book medium, and it's something that I've always enjoyed and liked. But most, hell, I just bought the other day, I got it there in the mail to me now, like the Adam Green Hatchet movie. It was a comic book adaptation of that. Like, a lot of people aren't aware of that. So there's a lot of times with those films, especially these indie films as well, they kind of mirror the indie comic scene, where folks realize this is a good space to tell more of your story or do different stuff with your story, because there are, like I mentioned earlier with film, the comparison is you're not limited by anything in comic books other than what your artist can draw. So you can do some crazy shit. This Dirt Witch does some crazy stuff when she shows up, that you could definitely do that in a movie, but it would require a lot of special effects work to make it work. So yeah, man, it's a good entertaining medium, I think, for people to pursue, especially those who love horror. It's it's hard sell sometimes, because people are like, I'm not going to read comic books. So give it a shot, man. And usually once people take a chance on it, they get a hold of something good, and they're like, oh shit, I didn't realize there's blood and guts and true actual horror stories being told in this form. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Now, it's tough, because you're bringing up, with movies, you have that time to do character development. You got that 90-minute runtime. Even with books, we can build a character development. Character development is so important in horror, anything horror, because, like you said, you gotta give a fuck about the characters. If you don't give a fuck about the characters, you don't care if they get torn apart or eaten, or you just don't care. You just have this film like, oh, okay, whatever. But that has to be, when a comic book, that has to be tough as hell to do.
It's tough. You're pretty limited by your space. Normally a typical comic book's usually around 22 pages of story. The Dirt Witches, we made it longer because I started out on that one. The other two that we did, the zombie one and the werewolf one, were 22 pages. But this one, I said, we're going to take a shot at doing something original and new. and I'm not going to limit myself. I said however long it is however long it's going to be. Now it does have to be in, because when they make these things, it's basically 2 pieces of paper or 4 comic book pages. You got the left and right and the front and back of both sides. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So it has to be in increments of 4 typically. So this one wound up turning out nicely, around 32 pages, which I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. And then we did for the Kickstarter, which is getting really close to being over. I think by the time this airs, it'll probably be over. But we did do a bonus chapter where we decided to add an extra 8-page story to it with an alternate ending. But yeah, it's tough, man. You really have your dialogue, I think, in a comic book, to really kind of make your character stick. And then the circumstances and things that you put them in as the author obviously is important. But it's definitely challenging to create a character that's unique and has a unique voice, and to inspire that empathy from the reader, so that, like you said, they actually can't, man, I hope nothing bad happens to this person. I really kind of like it. And then you do that with like his friend in the Dirt Witch story. His friend Rooster is most likely going to be everyone who reads its favorite character, because he's a pretty cool character. He's funny, and the way that he kind of sets the main character up a little bit more for that empathy level, so that when the shit starts going sideways, you're like, eesh, man, I feel bad for old Randall, So yeah, it's tough, man. It's tough because you're limited by space, and you're having to kind of, you get, say there's 6 panels, so 6 individual little pictures on one page. Usually they're going to be about this big, man. So you're going to have a lot of cool, pretty art in there that the artist is really busting their ass to make. And the last thing you want to do as a writer is cover 80% of that up with some gigantic word balloon to fill in your whole...
Yeah.
Like you try to write a novel in these word balloons. It just doesn't work. So you have very limited space to do this. So it definitely requires practice, and I think it's maybe an underappreciated skill for writing in that style, because it is challenging.
I can definitely imagine. Now, as an indie horror creator, Michael, one of the biggest challenges is marketing. To get your product in front of people. What are some things that you do?
Man, that's probably the hardest thing, dude. Is like, we just got this thing funded today on the last day. I think we had like 7 hours left, and I was at that point, I was genuinely like talking to because I have a business partner who's credited on the book as a development producer. He basically pays for all the art costs, and these things, we usually are into one of these books for about $7,000 on art, because like I said, we're published and distributed through Diamond, so we're going to be on comic book shelves for any shop that orders us. We have to. My approach was, I want my book to be able to speak art quality, to be able to compete with an Image book or a Marvel book or a DC book. So we put a lot of money in and take it very serious to put out a good looking comic book. But the marketing of it is probably the hardest thing. Like I said, we were down to the wire on this thing on getting made, and I was getting frustrated, because I'm like, bro, I've been posting, all these reviews are coming in. Everybody's like, this book's awesome. This book's awesome. And I'm thinking, shit, but it doesn't work. Unfortunately, social media is really anti-social media. There's so much bullshit in there that hides your stuff. It's very difficult to try to direct someone. So whenever a Facebook or an Instagram or a TikTok or Twitter or whatever it is, man, whenever you put that link in your post, they don't want people leaving Facebook, Instagram, whatever, to go to that link, that's not an Instagram link. So they kind of gets hidden and it gets, masked. So it's incredibly freaking difficult. I think on our end, we've really busted our ass to put out some really good stories. This is our 8th comic that we've released. And I had done a book prior to this. Prior to my comic books, I actually wrote a book, as I call it, that fortunately, I think I have some folks who dig the stories that I tell. So I typically go into each one with a little bit of a kind of curated reader base. It's nowhere near what I need it to be, as far as having these things be financially successful every time we do one. But, it's weird, man, because me personally, like, I don't like focusing on the financial side of it. I like telling entertaining stories. And anytime one person is like, bro, I fucking love this combo, man, I'm like, sweet, dude, mission accomplished. But then there's another side of you you've entered this endeavor, which is a comic book business. So there is a business side of it. You know, like I said, if you're spending $7,000 on a book and it doesn't make anything, you can't expect that person who's putting up that money to continue to put up that money if there's nothing coming back. You know what I mean? So it's a challenge at times to find that audience. I wish I had the secret to give to someone, like how to do it, but I don't know. I honestly don't know. Everything that I've tried, like the Dirt Witch, was incredibly frustrating because I'm like, everything on paper should have blown the doors off, right? I mean, I created this whole campaign. We built that extra ending to make the campaign interactive, where the backer, the reader who's going to buy the book, we gave them the opportunity. You get to choose your own ending. How does this thing end? You know, because when you finish reading this story, you're going to come out of it with two possible things in your mind. Either all of the shit you just read and saw in this comic book was real, that this monster came up and did all this terrible stuff, or there was no monster. That Randall, the main character, had just been bullied to the point where he lost his fucking mind and became a sociopath. Oh. So there's two, you know, you can come out of it two ways. And it was written that way, so that it's kind of ambiguous in a sense that there's no real hard data. You say, no, it couldn't have been in his mind because of this. You know, sometimes you go back and watch movie like Sixth Sense is a great example. You know, once everyone got that nut kick from the ending of that movie, and you're like, oh my God, you know, most people went back and rewatched it again, trying to find something to prove, you know, and then it wasn't there because he created the movie that way so that it worked. And so this was written in that way. But I'm like, okay, this is going to be an interactive campaign. You know, I mean, it's a 32-page book that we're selling for what a 22-page book sells for, and just had all of these boxes checked. I was like, dude, this is definitely going to work. And it did work, and it got us to where we needed to be, but barely crossed the minimum funding goal that we set, which is we set the goal at $4,000, which is like it's not a snooze or anything like that. But for all the fees and the cost to print these books and all that kind of stuff, if we make $4,000 from Kickstarter, we will probably my business partner will probably only see maybe $1,800, $2,000 back on that investment to get it made. So we don't expect it all to come from one thing either. You know, like I said, we're doing the trade paperback, so we're not having to draw this 100 pages of comics. You know, we're going to already have 3 of the books are finished. We're just adding this extra story to it. But that's just a secondary revenue source to kind of make a little bit of money back on that. And you just hope in the end result, I mean, ideally, you definitely want to break even. But you hoping that maybe he'll make a couple bucks so that it's an easier sell for me. Next time I go to him with a script and say, hey, dude, I got the next one. And he's like, all right. You know, it's a lot harder to do that. He's like, listen, bro, I done spent $28,000. I ain't made shit. You know what I mean? It's a little bit more difficult. So it's hard, dude. It's hard because some people err on the side of like they know that they're not going to make that amount of money back on it, so they tend to go with cheaper art. Sometimes that works out okay. You can find some dude in like Central America or somewhere like that who's killing it, who works for a page rate much less than an American writer or artist would do. But again, to me, it's like I want to work with these guys who are pro quality, who instill in you, like you mentioned when we opened this book looks fucking awesome. That's because we have a really kick-ass artist that's working on it. You know, not saying that the other guys suck. I'm just saying it's more of a dice roll to work with someone who's not an established professional, who's cheaper, who's in another country. There's a lot of things that could go wrong with that, so I kind of just avoid it. So, but some people go that way, man, because it's so hard to make that back. You know, to make back what it costs to make them. It's tough.
But as a consumer, though, you know, someone who's buying a comic book, you know, like you said, there's so much competition out there. There's so many other comic books, movies, whatever. You gotta have something that stands out, that grabs people's attention, that says, holy shit, what the fuck is that? That looks awesome. You have to do that. And that takes money. It takes money to do that. You gotta.
But there's a lot of dudes who don't really go that route, who are not aiming for comic book stores and things. You know, they're just content with making it themselves, selling it themselves, and selling it on like doing like crowdfunding things. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not what we're trying to do. My goal is to level up to bigger and better things. I have no interest in writing like Marvel comics or DC comics. I have my own stories I want to tell, but I got some of them that are fucking awesome that I don't want to commit to putting them out into the world and then having 400 people read it, and I'm like, well, shit,
Yeah.
I hope I got a bigger audience, what I mean? But you do things like this, and you just aim to get a little bit better every time and grow a little bit more every time, and it doesn't always work. Sometimes you go backwards, and it's kind of like one of these things, man. And I think it's just persistence too. It's a tough industry. Any entertainment endeavor is tough. I mean, hell, I'm sure with podcasting, dude. It's
100%.
By the time I get my 10th episode out, I'm going to have 15,000 subscribers, and it just doesn't work that way. It requires a constant hustle and, more importantly, a commitment to continue doing what you're doing. I mean, if you get into that, what you're podcasting for money, the kicks in the balls you're going to have to take is going to run 99% of people off of it. I think that's why there's an average of like most podcasts last 20 episodes or something like that, then they go away.
Something. Yep. They don't even last a year because especially on YouTube, that first year is hell. So I'm going into my second year, and I'm actually monetized. Which most, if you Google right now, how long does it take the new YouTuber gets monetized? They say something like 3 to 4 years. I was just being consistent as fuck. I was able to knock it out my first year, but at the same time, I probably, believe it or not, I probably invest somewhere between $4,000 to $5,000 into this business.
I believe it.
To only make $14 a month. So but you have to do that. I mean, like I was telling you beforehand, every single indie creator that I come on and interview on my show, if they have a Kickstarter, if they have an Indiegogo, if they have anything like that crowdfunding, I'm not sending $100 or anything. But I donate something because at the end of the day, I'm hoping it's going to come back and it's going to, people are like, listen, you need to fucking check out this guy. He's no bullshit. He's just not doing a YouTube channel promoting indie horror. He's actually supporting them financially as well, and
right.
that's what you have to do.
No, it is, dude. It is. It requires that type of commitment. You have to really immerse yourself into the community that you're doing, and just stick with it, man. I mean, I'm a believer, and I believe this. I've told both of my sons this their whole lives. I believe that anybody can do anything that they want to do. It's just the bigger your goal, the more commitment it's going to take, because the bigger the goal comes with way more adversity that you're going to have to overcome. It's a lot of no's and a lot of defeats and a lot of letdown. You have to have really thick skin, but you can do it. You just have it. Yeah. I believe personally at the universe or whatever is all right, you want to do this big ass thing? Cool. Let's see how bad you want to do it. And they're just going to keep hitting you. And if you stay the course, because you can see this. I like watching documentaries about people that of, anywhere from Ben and Jerry's or whatever the rock bands or the vast majority of the time, this theme is there. They were all told no. They were all told they suck, The writers send in their letters and they get 1 million rejections, and then eventually it catches, And that's, I think you see that over and over and over again. There's enough evidence of that to support my theory that if you are willing to commit to it and truly, I'm doing this, that you'll do it. It takes a while to get there, man. So we're all still in the in the throes of it.
You got to keep chucking, man. You got to keep chucking, man.
No, you do. You have.
But you also got to find something that also too, that you lock in on. It could have been someone in your life or someone who's a naysayer, and you gotta do that thing that you focus on. I'm gonna prove that person wrong.
Yeah,
that motivates you more than anything.
Yeah,
whatever. You gotta find something that fucking really you lock on, and that motivates you to prove people wrong, or prove the naysayers wrong.
My big one personally is I I grew up in an area right outside of Tallahassee, Florida, and I'll be 52 this year, so I'm a little bit longer in the tooth than probably most people you have on here. But I grew up in an era of the 70s and mainly throughout the 80s where doing artistic stuff like this was looked at as being frivolous. It wasn't serious. It wasn't a serious job. Like, that's stupid. Go get a job for the state and get benefits and retirement and security and all that, And it took me up until I had my first son. I think I was 28 when he was born. And that's when I was like, I'm not going to do that to them. I am going to nurture whatever the fuck it is they want to do. If they tell me they want to be a professional Pokemon player, I don't give a shit what it is. I'm as much as I can, and I tell them that. And so it as just secondarily, it went into me where I'm like, man, I'm going to do all of this stuff now, regardless of what my age is, that I've always had in my heart my whole life. I look back on my life, and there was times where I had plenty of signs telling me that I should be writing. Even everywhere it started to my earliest recollection from like 7th grade, we were given this assignment to write a poem, and I wrote this poem. I actually tried, and I wrote this poem, and it was really good. And the teacher accused me of plagiarizing it. I got in trouble. Stole it from somewhere. And normally that would piss you off, but I just always remember looking back about it and being proud of it. Damn, she thought I stole this. That was pretty cool. It must be good enough. This adult thinks I stole it from another adult, and that was probably a sign that I should have been like, man, maybe you should really work on this. But, it just shit happens and I didn't. And it just took, for whatever reason, later in my life when I was finally decided where I was really going to do what I probably should have been doing all along. God damn, I wish I would have, man. I'd have been, my bibliography would be much more substantial than it is now. I'd have to help about work. I've been cranking out, dude, in these last few years. But it's such a complicated thing. But I think the point is, for anybody that's listening out there who's feeling that frustration, is when you commit to it, you lock onto that shit like a pit bull on a rope, and nothing can yank it out of your mouth. There's a million reasons of why you shouldn't be doing it, but you can't listen to that stuff. You have to stay focused, keep your eye on the prize, and don't give up, because it's easy to give up, dude. It's very discouraging.
It's so easy. John, it's 9:30 at night here in Maryland, and we're doing an interview. I mean, it's past it. It's past not it. I mean, but you just got to be locked in. You just have to. Sometimes you even got to make yourself feel uncomfortable.
You do
things that make you feel uncomfortable.
You have to constantly, just as like I said, you can't take no for an answer. You also can't be that guy who smells his own farts and say, this smells delicious. You have to be realistic and understand that you need to be constantly improving and leveling up. It's literally like a video game. You have to constantly be applying yourself, constantly be immersing yourself in whatever it is that you want to do. I read a shitload of comic books, man. Number one, I love them. I've read them my whole life. But now as a creator, when I read them, I take a lot more from them, and I'm like, okay, I like this, I like that, I like how he crafted this, and it makes my stories better. My wife gets on to me sometimes because I'll watch a horror movie that someone will recommend to me, because I used to be an actor, years ago. That was one of my things I said I was going to do, and then I did it, and then I kind of stopped doing it for a while after. But I watch a movie, and I kind of horror movies are the worst about this, man, because it's really hard to make a really good horror movie and then carry it all the way through to the end. For some reason, they always start out strong, and man, it just falls apart.
Yeah.
I watched a couple lately, God damn, dude, and she's like, you just can't enjoy something. You always got to tear it apart. I'm like, no, I'm not trying to tear it apart. It's just like when you're immersed in this and you're constantly trying to grow and level up, shit like that sticks out to you. Like, I'm not going to do that. That's fucking stupid. And that prevents me from doing something stupid. You know what I mean?
We talk about Evil Dead Rise, the last Evil Dead. That movie did that to me. It started off fucking strong as all hell. That and Scream 6 started off strong as hell, and it's just went boom. I'm like, well, what the fuck happened? It was almost like some new filmmakers came in halfway through and and
Yeah.
and didn't know where the story was going and just made your own fucking story. I was like, what the fuck
Like,
is going on here?
Cool effects. You know, I watched two recently, three really, technically. My wife put me onto one called Low Lives, which was actually pretty good. It had, you know, some stuff in it I took a little bit of issue with, but all in all, it was worth watching. And then I watched one called Terrified. It's an Argentinian horror film. Have you seen that one?
No, not.
Dude, it's a cool concept, but they just there was just some parts in it where it was like, fuck, dude, like this is almost a masterpiece. Like, why did you let? My biggest thing was like some of the actors, some creepy fucking shit in there. It was one of the most tense movies I've seen in a long time. As far as like, I like that kind of fear, not jump scares as much, but like that slow build, like shit, something's about to happen, and then they hold you. That's the stuff that I like, you know. But they had these parts where these actors they encountered this shit that freak you out, and then their reactions were just stupid. So it took me out a little bit, but that one was pretty good. Terrified, it's called. It's on. I think you can watch it on Shudder. And then my goddaughter's father, who's a big horror buff, said, "Oh man, you need to watch this one called The Dark and the Wicked." And I watched that, dude, and I was like, you should have called that shit The Dark, the Wicked, and the Boring as hell, man. Because it was just one of those movies. I've seen that one, but it was just, and no offense to it, got reviewed actually pretty high, surprisingly, but it was one of those movies that was just so goddamn bleak and depressing for the first 80% of it. The first 80 minutes, you're like, damn, I feel like I need some therapy. It's not scary, it's just bums me out. And then I felt it was a little bit cheap how they, at the end, they kind of threw in some big, like, oh my God, like, you know, kind of like Mist type ending moments that I felt was cheap. I was like, bro, this is like bullshit. Like, you haven't set this up. The whole rest of the movie is boring as fuck, but now you throw in these kind of cool moments at the end. Get the fuck out of here. You know, that was how I took it. So stuff like that, you know, it drives my wife crazy. But I look at it and I'm like, I reverse analyze it as opposed to like being hypercritical of the people that made it. I'm like, what did I not like about it? So I don't do those in my own stories and be a hypocrite. Because the last thing I ever want to do is talk shit about something, and then some people come back to me and be like, bro, you're fucking shit did the same shit. Shut the fuck.
Same, exactly, yeah. Because that's how I felt about Hereditary. And I know people love Hereditary. I actually like Midsommar. But Midsommar, I'm not Midsommar. Hereditary, I felt like I wanted to fucking commit suicide. I mean, because it's just so depressing and so dark and so boring, and it dragged. To me, the movie just dragged.
Now with Hereditary, I went and saw that in the theater, and I was like, bro, this is a 9 out of 10 horror movie until the end, until that whole it's a cult thing was revealed. I was like, fucking A24 don't know how to end a movie without it being a fucking cult. Like, Jesus Christ, the was it the goat or the witch, the damn Hereditary, fucking Midsommar. And I like Midsommar. Midsommar was the one.
I love Midsommar.
Worked, you know, it worked well, and it was something new and fresh. And I like how that one was set in daylight mostly. They didn't rely on a lot of night.
Yes,
it was creepy as hell for what it was, but it worked in that film. I loved Hereditary. It was bleak as shit, though. You're right. It was like, bro, come on, give me a little bit of sunshine here amongst all these clouds.
It was so fucking depressing. Like, I felt like, oh my goodness, I need something to like perk me up or something. This is fucking depressing.
Was another one I felt like it was like that. It was a good movie, and I appreciate it for what it was, but it was just so fucking just bleak at times. I'm like, bro, come on, give me something. Don't do that. Like, my shit, I like to scare you, but I also like to like. I feel like fear works best when it's seasoned with little sprinkles of humor. You know, you take someone, you take them up to tension level, then you bring them back down with something funny, and it keeps them uncertain. They can't quite predict what's going to happen, and that makes the scares hit a little harder. You know, I mean, one of my favorite.
Exactly.
Sometimes people think I'm crazy for this, dude. But one of my favorite horror movies of the last fucking 30 years probably was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake with Jessica Biel.
I love that one,
dude. I saw that.
I love that one,
and I saw that in the theater with another grown man, friend of mine, and I remember being so fucking stressed out. I had to fake that I had to go take a piss because I just needed a minute. to kind of kick. I was like, bro, this is stressing me out, but it was so well done, and it did that. It had some couple moments in there with the R.L. Ermey guy with some humor and shit like that, but it was ultimately, it was just boom. I love that movie.
Balls to the wall. Yep. Yeah. Unfortunately, they have not made a good Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie since, unfortunately. But
it was gory and fun. It's like, bro, why can y'all not? Barbarian, another movie I watched. I loved it.
I love Barbarian.
It would have ended 10 minutes earlier, been a masterpiece. But then they had to do the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 ending where they climb up the fucking thing and people fall off of it. I'm like, bro, have y'all not seen fucking Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2? But up until that point, it was fantastic. I thought, but they just can't seem to stick the ending on a lot of these. I don't get it.
But Scream 6, right? I'm a big Scream fan, right?
Great movie.
I went to see Scream 6. And Scream 6, I'm watching the movie. I'm like, holy shit, is this better than the original? I'm sitting there thinking that the whole entire time. And then that last fucking 15 minutes, man, it was like, oh.
It's like everybody checks out. Like, just throw something up there, It was like, come on.
But, like, I mean, it was the most predictable killer I've ever seen in a fucking. I've never seen. Because the whole entire time I was like, oh, it's him. I was like, man, it can't be him. Like, the first 5 minutes, I was like, it can't be him. That's they're doing that.
They went with the whole, they're going to be trying to figure out who it is, so we're going to make it the most obvious person, and then they're going to convince themselves that no way it could be the most obvious. That's what they did. They painted themselves in a corner with this trying to be tricky shit on who was the killer, But, I mean, you've executed perfectly in the past. I mean,
yes.
Why not do it again, like, something cool like that?
I knew in the first 20 minutes, I was like, that can't be the killer. This is the most obvious fucking person to be the killer. Holy shit. This is the first time because usually the most obvious person is not the fucking killer.
Well, talking about Scream, dude, you go back and you watch, it's very much like what we were talking about earlier with, like, Sixth Sense. When you watch the original Scream and then you get the reveal of Billy Loomis and the gang, spoiler alert, people naturally went and watched it again to see if it worked. But it was written that way, So it creates, when you do that, same with The Dirt Witch, hopefully that's what we'll do, is people will go back and maybe reread it and be like, wait a minute, that was bullshit. It couldn't have been in all of his mind. But it's the same with Scream. It's just a beautifully, masterfully executed story. And I don't think that's too much to ask. But for some reason in horror, they act like that shit is unobtainable, like it's impossible. way too often, man. It's kind of a letdown. But yeah, I'm with you. Scream 6, it was just like, come on, dude. It's a money grab.
It was a masterpiece. It was a masterpiece until that fourth quarter, and it was like, get the fuck out of here. I'm like, are you fucking sick? But the one thing, so listen, I'm not a horror creator, but I'm a horror fan, and I'm a horror audience. So I'm the person who pays to see creator stuff. I feel like a lot of horror creators insult their audience.
Well, they do, especially if you got something like Scream, where you've built up this massive fan base of seriously loyal fans who love this thing. If you're going to get the job of the studio and the director and the actors who are making that, bro, you should really put a lot of respect on that and feel like I'm carrying a heavy shadow. I'm walking in a deep shadow here. I need to make myself worth it, and we need to make our contribution as good, if not better, than anything before us, because it's a legacy at this point, and you can't just shit the bed like that, because it's unforgivable to me.
Look, I don't even want to see Scream 7 now. I really don't. I mean, people were talking about, the so-and-so's not going to be in Scream 7. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. I really don't care. I mean, like, that movie was, I've never had a movie in a long time that had me up so fucking high and then took me down and bust me in the fucking ground so fucking hard, so fast. I was like, shit.
Yeah, dude, that one I was talking about, that The Dark and the Wicked, that was the director and the writer of The Strangers, which is one of my favorite. Some people don't call it a horror movie. I call it a horror movie because that movie scared the shit out of me. Liv Tyler, and that was a fantastic movie. So when I heard this dude did this one, I was like, oh, yeah, boy, let's go. And then it was just such a letdown. It's like, bro, what happened? M. Night Shyamalan, talking about Sense, that fucking guy.
Jesus. I don't even want to fucking talk about him. I've seen his last couple movies in a movie theater because people are saying, oh, this will be the next big one. He's back. No, M. Night Shyamalan is fucking done.
Yep, you got me too many times.
He's got me too many times. He got me old and fucking. What was the other one? Even the one with Glass. Oh, fucking Glass got me. That movie was so fucking bad. I remember sitting in the theaters because Split. I actually enjoyed Split.
It was good.
Like, oh, okay. This is good.
McAvoy's performance in it really lifted that up a lot. That dude was great.
And then I'm like, okay, so he's bringing the characters from that movie and fucking Invincible. It's called Invincible, yeah. With Unbreakable. He's bringing those two characters. I mean, those two stories together, and I enjoyed both of those movies. Yeah. I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. And like, I'm watching this movie. I'm like, what kind of budget is this movie shot on? Because it's literally shot in one fucking location.
Right.
The whole fucking movie is shot in one location, and I'm like, is this an indie horror film? Like, I'm like, what the fuck is going on here?
It's unacceptable, man. It really is, bro. I mean, again, I don't get it, dude. There's too many good ones. It's too many good ones out there to justify a lot of these bad ones that we're getting presented with. It's like, hell, comic books are the same way. I've read a lot of shitty ass comic books. I'm gonna make a shitty comic book. It is very important to me that my shit is good because people are buying this thing. I will feel like an asshole if I sell a book and somebody's like, bro, this shit was stupid, man. You know, I would feel like an ass. And so I have a lot of things in place to prevent that from ever getting out. I have a lot of people in my circle who are like, bro, no, that don't work. You know,
because imagine if you're a creator and you look at the reviews and you see a bunch of 1 stars, like this is the biggest piece of shit ever. Like, don't you just quit after that? I mean, you gotta quit, right?
Hopefully, you'll do some serious self-reflection and be like, wait a minute, I thought this was good. This shit's stupid. You know, sometimes people. That's another thing I always tell independent comic books, and it's similar with films. With films, there's a little bit more of a financial gateway you have to overcome to get into that world, because even making an indie film is expensive. You know,
it is.
Talking 5 figures minimum, probably closer to the $100,000 mark to make anything that's going to be watchable. You know, for the most part. Comic books are a little bit easier. Like I said before, you can get into them at a low buy-in if you use shitty art and all that other kind of stuff. And you don't have, there's no doorway you have to get through. You just walk right on, like, here I am, here it is, you know. Mm-hmm. And then you start duping. It honestly kind of pisses me off, because I'm like, bro, if you're going to be making those books and someone takes a chance and buys it and it fucking sucks, that's a harder sell for me to that person. Someone who takes it very seriously and has a whole group of people telling me if this thing works or not. You know, it's a lot of people involved with this. And you should, people who lack self-awareness sometimes, and maybe that's the problem with some of these film directors, and even you see it in some big budget movies. You're like, how in the fuck make this pilot?
Horrible.
You know, it's like people just don't have self-awareness or something.
But that's why I don't. I mean, I understand it, but I don't understand why, as filmmakers, I'm like, are you worried that anybody can make a movie now? Like, literally anybody who has an iPhone or something, they can make a movie and just put it out there and call it a horror movie, right? And you get hundreds of thousands of those movies. You go on Tubi or Amazon or even Netflix, you see they're filled with them. Yeah, and they are not great at all. Like, you can tell that the person didn't care. It's just something, you know. I mean, it's just something they just put out there. I don't get
it, man. I have the utmost respect for anyone out there who has a story they want to tell. And if they're a filmmaker or a writer or a fucking photographer, whatever, dude, like, you have this story in you, you want to get it out into the world. I have a massive amount of respect for anybody like that. But that respect quickly goes away when you just shit it out into the world without really. It's like, dude, what? I thought this story meant something to you. Like, where's the passion at? I don't see it in this finished product. Like, what happened? Don't let that happen. Keep that fire throughout the whole process. You wanted to tell this story for some reason. Tell it, but tell it well. You know, put the effort into it and make sure you're doing as best that you can. And I'm with you, man. Comics are the same as like horror movies. Like, I fucking go on Shudder and I'm scrolling through those movies and I'm like, I know this is some bunch of bullshit, bro. Like, I need a filter Like, because I tried to have a TikTok filter. I watch all these fucking people on TikTok like, oh my God, this is the scariest movie I've ever seen in my life. I watch them and be like, what in the fuck? You've never watched a horror movie. This shit sucks.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So I don't trust any of them people. So it's like, it's a dice roll, bro. Every time you go into a...
But if you're a good...
It's rolling the dice.
But if you're an actual good horror movie filmmaker, don't you want to filter because then you get like you were saying, you get tossed into the mix with the shit, you know, and then everything
sucks. Yeah.
And then at that point, everything's shit. You know what I mean? Because if listen, if you're a diamond and you're laying in a big fucking tub of shit, like no one knows you're a diamond.
Right. Nobody's gonna dig in there for you. Right.
No one's gonna dig in a big tub of shit to find a diamond.
And then here's the other thing too, man. If you're gonna make a bad horror movie, be self-aware to know.
Yes,
process,
I like those.
This is stupid. I'm gonna go full fucking stupid with it. That's fun.
Yes.
Like good.
Those are fun. I like those.
It's okay. And there's a whole something of I grew up in the '80s, bro. Trust me. I cut my teeth on good bad horror movies. I fucking love.
I love good bad horror movies. Love them.
They're fun. But what I can't
I love the full moon shit.
A bad fucking movie that thinks it's good. It's like, bro, how do you not?
Those are scary.
And the thing with a movie, it's easier to do in a comic book because it's a small team of people, and most of them are getting paid by us to draw it. So if the artist is like, bro, this fucking stupid, but I'm getting paid, so I'm gonna do my best. You know, the filmmakers, you're like, there's a lot of people on there, you know, and the person in charge, I think it's important that always has to want to make the best thing they can. And a big important part of that process is you have to, and this is another good piece of advice for new creators out there, you have to always embrace and search out that criticism. You know, you don't want people telling you everything you do is good because you're never going to get better from that. Find out what didn't work so that you can make it better, you know. And God's sake, and when you're making a movie, find that out before the fucking thing is released. If you have to reshoot it or whatever, do that. You know, like you said, dude, it's a reputation thing too. I would think, like, you know, you're a filmmaker.
Because even
I've been in bad movies. Shit, I acted in a fucking sci-fi original film. I think every movie I was in as a professional actor, when I remember the Screen Actors Guild, were rated like the worst movies of all time. I mean, it was some fucking stinkers, dude. I mean, I did one with 50 Cent and shit, you know, that was like this like B level, or not even B, it was probably like Y level like action called Jump Out Boys. But I got to hang out with Chris Christopherson and do a movie, sing with him for the day. And then I did another one called Beyond a Reasonable Doubt, this Michael Douglas movie, but I got to hang out with Orlando Jones for the day, which was cool. That movie fucking sucked. The Sci-Fi Channel movie, good bad though. It's like an original Sci-Fi Channel. Nobody goes expect fucking Citizen Kane when you're watching a sci-fi original movie.
I know.
Friends on that movie, and we had a lot of fun. It was like fucking pterodactyls in World War II. You know, that's what it was about. I've been in a bunch of shitty movies, but I mean, I'm not in a position to go, excuse me, director, this fucking needs some work, you know. Be like, yeah, fuck off. You know, go find somebody else.
Even like my day job, right? My day job and my YouTube channel. I know if I did a shitty job. Like, if my day job, I can look and be like, well, that's my best word. You know what I mean? And even with my YouTube channel, if I do an interview, I'm editing, I'm like, this was not a good interview. This was not my best word. And I can I can put down the reasons why. I can sit down and evaluate myself and say, these are the reasons this wasn't a good interview.
Yeah.
Because I was tired, or maybe because I did too many interviews that fucking day, or maybe it just could be the guest. But I'm able to put together why this was not an interview. I would be delusional and crazy to think that every interview I did, I'm knocking out a fucking part. It's not true. This is a great one. This one might actually give me some shit to. But John, where can anyone find you, my friend?
Oh, yeah. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, at Endangered Comic. So like the word endangered species, but comic, Endangered Comic. I don't hardly ever go on Twitter anymore. It's a cesspool of toxic bullshit. And then I play around on TikTok a lot. I actually have a lot of fun on there. So before they
nice.
ban us, you can catch me on there. I think it's John Jon McCarthy McCarthy Comics. I think is what it's called. You'll see me a bald head on there talking shit.
Awesome. Listen, everybody, look out for Dirt Witch. By the way, John's gonna send me a copy of that bad boy. I'm gonna take a look at it. I'm gonna tell you guys how.
Honest review. Honest reviews. That's all I want.
I'm gonna give an honest review. If it's a piece of shit, I'm gonna say I'm not joking. I think it looks like an amazing fucking comic book.
It is good.
I'll tell you, it looks like an amazing comic book. So
I stand on my work. Like I said, I'm not a hypocrite, bro. I want, if you don't like it, tell me. I would be surprised if any horror fan reads this and doesn't like it. I stand on that shit. I promise.
I like that, man. I like that. So, guys, please check it out. All right, everybody, thank you for coming to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and that is John McCarthy.
Thank you very much for having me.
Next time.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Have a good night.